Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by SurvivingBreastCancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of SurvivingBreastCancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. We are continuing today's conversation with Abigail, Amanda, Amy, and Claudia as we talk about survivor's guilt and also celebrating when someone does really well and responds really well to treatment. Now, I am so excited for today's conversation because these women share their personal experiences and really provide deep insights into what it's like living with MBC and the tough conversations they're having with their children. I also want to share, you are going to be hearing some acronyms such as NED or NEAD or Dancing with Ned. NED stands for No Evidence of Disease and NEAD stands for No Evidence of Active Disease. So just keep that in mind as you're listening to today's episode. I also want to highlight, in case you are not familiar with all of our programs, hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/events, and you can check out all of our programs and events that we offer weekly and monthly to help support you throughout your experience with breast cancer. And a shout out to our SBC Spanish leadership team because we are now offering our programs in Spanish. So again, hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/events, and it's all right there for you. Now let's turn things over to our amazing panelists. Again, Abigail, Amanda, Amy, and Claudia. Welcome to the conversation.
I did not get any scans for 15 months because my friends were getting scanned, and Abigail knows this. My friends were getting scanned and they had progression after progression after progression. I do those scans. So I know when I get up and I'm going to be scanned by somebody I know, I'm reading their face and they're trying not to have a reaction the same way I do when we do a patient. When I'm laying there, if I'm laying there an extra 30 seconds, I know they're looking for something. I know if they do a certain thing, they're looking. I know the noises. So it's kind of traumatic. It's very scary. And that's the thing. I've talked to my oncologist about it. Like they threatened to take away the treatment I was on because I was afraid to get scanned. And she's like, why are you not going? And I'm like, everybody I know, they're either dying or they're having progression. It's inevitable. I know I will have progression. And my fear is when I have my progression, because I am lobular, mine will be every 3 months I've got to change a treatment or whatever. And so I have to try to do something positive to put myself somewhere else to not stay in my head. And sometimes it's easy and other days it's horrible because there are days that when I go in to scan, every single patient I scan, when they get to their doctor the next time, they're going to be told either they're metastatic or that they've had progression. Actually, today I took care of a patient that thinks that they're in the clear, and I had to act like that they're in the clear, but when they get the call this week, it's not going to be good. So it was a hard ride home today because I'm like, I know at some point that's going to be me. I know it's going to happen. It's just, when will it happen? And I'm past the mark on Ibrance. So I feel lucky. So when you hear somebody else, I've heard people say 8 years or 10 years, you're excited, but there's also a sense of guilt too. Cause I'm like, why does it work for me and it don't work for the other person? You wonder that, what is it about me that it works and it doesn't work? And you, not that you want to be rapidly changing, but you think all these thoughts. It's a difficult position to be in because you kind of feel like you feel bad or feel a little guilty that, you know what I mean? But you shouldn't feel that way either.
I remember meeting Abigail. We had the exact same germline mutation, very similar diagnosis story, both bone only. And I went this way and then she went this way. And so even with similarities in the beginning, I mean, everybody is so unique. And now even looking at testing for things like PD-L1, immunotherapy markers, things like that, Abigail and I have very different results. And so I think as you're hearing different people's stories and, Amy, who's on her first line, and here I am on my 8th line in 3.5 years, just remember that everybody is so unique. And I often tell a friend of mine with advanced cancer. She's a different kind, but my story is not her story. And I think that's important to remember, that we all are living our own individual stories, including how this cancer is going to grow and manifest. And, just like we celebrate Janice 5 or 6 years dancing with Ned, I mean, there are those amazing stories. And so, I don't know what's going to happen in my case either. Even though we keep going down the line, it's like we still hold the hope that this, even though the history might want to tell us differently, but we hold hope that, something is going to actually catch it and I'll have a period of being stable. And so as you're hearing these just different experiences, remember, my experience is not necessarily going to be your experience, at least in the timeline that I've experienced progression. So I just wanted to add that because I know it can be scary.
Yeah. And then thank you. 6 months ago, my oncologist came to, was it 6 months ago, Abigail? 3 to 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
About 6 months ago, because my oncologist knows I'm doing nothing without research, calling all my people, getting everybody's opinion. They came to me because I have lobular. So the thought is, when I progress, it won't be bones next time. It will be organs and possibly brain, just because the type of cancer, like a lot of details. So they came to me and let's get ahead of it and let's just switch treatment. I literally was freaking out, calling Abigail, reading, trying to do some other stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to mess with anything. I don't want to change anything. I don't know what to do. So they let me sit on it. So I have remained on Ibrance. But to my oncologist's point, that's risky because the next thing she wants to try me on would stop the crossover to the brain. But I don't want to change anything because right now this is working. So do you make the decision to try to get ahead of it, or do you stay where you're at? What I can tell you is you take the knowledge of the stories that you hear and you do what is best and right for you as the individual, because there is no right or wrong answer. It's what works best for you.
Yes, absolutely. The doctors have the statistics, right? They know the average experiences, or they know the statistical likelihood of various subtypes, like invasive lobular carcinoma does tend to go to the brain, whereas invasive ductal carcinoma tends to go to the bones first. So in some ways, Amy's cancer or the cancer in Amy's body, it's not hers, it's just in her body. It is already behaving oddly. And that's just a good example of, we have statistics, we have likelihoods, but then we still are individuals and we have to make those decisions about our individual situation. Thank you, Amy, for pointing that out.
I'd like to go back to Amanda and ask, we asked Amy how she manages when she sees all of her friends dealing with progression or dying from metastatic breast cancer. What has your experience been, having gone through so many lines of treatment, and then on the reciprocal, seeing friends who are able to stay on the first line or second line of treatment for much longer than you've been able to?
I think when I hear of somebody having progression, I just have deep compassion, because I know what that's like to get those results, and it's almost like back to square one, where you're getting that diagnosis all over again, because you have to regroup and you've got to figure out, okay, what's the next best treatment line? And there's so much that goes into it. So I just have deep, deep compassion. And I know I've experienced similar feelings. When I hear people dancing with Ned, I get so excited, because I feel like we have still so much to learn in the medical community, the scientific community around research and what is driving cancer. And I mean, we are just scratching the surface of what we know. And so for something to work for somebody means that there's a win, and that is a beautiful thing. That is a necessary thing. And so I get excited for that. And then at the same time, I think, okay, what do we not know about what's happening in my body? Because there's still too much unknown, and that's why we are where we are. And so I tend to get really curious, but I celebrate with those who celebrate, and then, mourn with those who mourn. I feel like that's kind of where I'm at.
So I wanted Amanda to say that. I didn't prepare her for that, but I figured that's what she was going to say, because I have heard some people who have not had a lot of progressions say that they're reticent to share their good news. They're reticent to celebrate because there are so many other people who are not. And so I wanted you to hear it from Amanda, who has had a lot of struggle with progression, that sharing your good news is good news for everybody. When we see other people doing well, we know that that's good information for the scientists. That's good information for somebody to look at. Why is this drug working for this person and not somebody else? So just wanted to say that. Claudia, talk about how you experience other people's progressions or other people's good news, especially when you're in that, when nothing was going on and you were no evidence of disease.
Yes. I think that one of the good things about having the community out there of people who have metastatic breast cancer, it kind of goes both ways. When I was first diagnosed and I found out that Janice had exactly the same thing as me and that she was free for so long, I'm like, yes, that's going to be me. That's definitely going to be me. Yes. And then when I found out that the cancer had come back on my left breast, I was like, what happened? Why can my life, why can I not be like that? What did happen? What was going on? Why didn't I? Was it something that I wasn't aware of? Was it something that I didn't read? Was it something that my oncologist did not tell me? And so, yes, you start thinking about all those things. When you have other people that I've known through the metastatic breast cancer community, like you, Abigail, that I've known you for so long, and that I seen pictures of you when you were really sick. I seen pictures of you when you were like with no cancer, with treatment not working, with treatment working. You just want to do something. You want to do something for that person, and not only for that person, but you want to do something for others. I want to learn more about triple negative, or I want to learn more about stage 4, and see how I can help, just like I got helped through the process. Because it was actually when I found out about my second diagnosis, the second time I emailed Christine, and she was the one who told me, ask your doctor about the genomic testing, and Janice was the same way. Ask her about the genomic test. So yes. So yes, again, the community gives you both things. It gives you the knowledge, and it also gives me, it has given me the blessing to meet people who are going through different things, who are in different medications than I am, who I can support, who, when I feel down or if I have a question, I can ask someone. So that's basically what it has been for me.
So there's that double-edged sword to a certain
Yes,
extent, right? You
absolutely.
see the good and the bad.
The good and the bad.
Being in community with other people with the same diagnosis.
Given the ups and downs, right? There's times and opportunities to celebrate, and then there's times to mourn, as you so eloquently said, Amanda. But Amy, how, in your experience, you keep coming back, right? Everyone keeps coming back. Actually, everyone on this call, is so engaged in the MBC community. What keeps you coming back despite the ups and downs and the grief and the celebrations?
Because I feel like that is the only community that gets how I feel. Like, I feel like they understand, even if I've had minimal progression, if I have a fear or have anxiety about something, if I share, I feel like they understand how I feel. We might not feel the exact same way, but I also feel like genuinely, and for the most part, we understand like what 5 minutes of somebody's time means, or what it is, that like you might not get a second chance to have that conversation or to say something. You know what I mean? I struggle with going to sleep at night because it's like, oh, every night, like, am I going to have this ache or pain? Is it going to be something? Because, you know, like, did I leave anything on the table? And I think for the community, I have made some great friendships. I have made great connections. And I feel like even in the worst of times, there's some kind of joyous thing. And in the best of times, there's also some sadness because there's people we're missing or whatever. So it's like a balance, and it forces you to like look at life. For me, scanning patients is becoming more difficult because when I see it, like I would see the same patients over and over, but now when they don't come back, I'm like, oh, are they still here? Because it's not like I can go and look. You know what I mean? I don't know them outside of that circumstances, but you want to know. But you also know, because I've seen friends like lose friends over the last few years, that I also know how hard it is on the friends and the family. And I think for me, what I've realized is sometimes my family gets jealous of the friendships, because if I'm going through something, the first thing I want to do is come to my community that's going to give me the tools I need to go to my family, versus I don't want my family to understand the fears I have or whatever, because I don't want them to ever have to experience it from this perspective. You know what I mean? They give care, but none of us in this group probably would want our family to feel or know exactly how we think about things, because that means that they're living the same kind of journey. So for me, I think that's why I continue to do it. And I want the next person, there's going to be somebody after us. I don't want them to feel alone or isolated. I want them to feel supported. So if we spread the word, then the tools are there for those people that are going to come after us.
And Amanda, I want to come over to you because you have one adult son, one almost adult son. And Amy just talked about the, burdening the family and how the family looks at our struggles or our experiences. What is it like with your kiddos as you're going through progression after progression?
Yeah. I mean, it's so tough. And I think there are times where I don't even want to talk about it with them. Talking about it with the NBC community is different. Again, like Amy said, it's a community that gets it. They're living it too. They're walking it too. But it's just been traumatic. And I'm also a single parent. And so to inflict that trauma on my boys over and over is not anything I want to do ever. And so it's hard. And so we actually talk often about what they want to know. And if they don't want to know the details, that's okay. And we, strategize about what our conversations can look like around treatment. And do they want to know when I have scans? They want to know when I have, a treatment change. And so far they do. They've stayed in the know, and we have great support. We have counselors and mentors and family and all of that that's just around us. But I do feel like it's not a one-way through. There's a lot of reassessing. What's the right conversation to have, and being mindful of if the news is something that they can even process in the moment. As students, my oldest son transferred from North Carolina to a university here in Florida. And so that was a big transition. And it's like, that's his focus, not cancer, not my diagnosis. And so not this diagnosis. So it's a moving target, but, they've been amazing. They've been amazing.
And I wonder, so I'm going to flip over to Claudia in a moment because she has daughters. Amanda has two sons. How is it different, do you think? And then I'll ask Amanda, or I'm sorry, ask Claudia. But how is it different, do you think, because you have boys and the likelihood of them getting breast cancer, even with ATM, is still low? How do you think that changes your conversations with them, or does it?
Yes, I think, initially they think, they're men, so they're not going to get it. And so we've had conversations around, okay, well, men can still get it, even though it's a lot it's not as common. My oldest actually did test for the ATM mutation and does not have it. And so that was a really big moment of just, does he want to do it? And that was his choice to test. And then, kind of holding your breath, and then doesn't have it, and being so grateful for that, because the ATM mutation causes increased risk of other cancers as well. And so it's tough. It's tough because I think when I was 38 when I was diagnosed, and when you look at just the incidence of cancer, it seems like it's just on the rise in general. And so our minds have been open, not just about breast cancer, but so many different kinds. And, what can we do? What are we powerless, even if we try to do something, and in terms of prevention? And I don't even know where I land on some of that stuff anymore because of just my own experience. But it's just a lot of conversation.
Good. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
One thing that has always frustrated me as a parent is that germline mutations that might raise the incidence of breast cancer or any other type of cancer, you can't test your children. They get to make that decision when they turn 18. And so, not knowing, right? Being in that situation of not knowing, I think the general knowledge or general thought in the medical community is that we want people to be able to make their own decisions and not to have something hanging over them. But still, as a parent, still kind of want to know. So Claudia, talk to us about how does it change, or how does your experience maybe different from Amanda's, having girls versus boys, and talking to them about progression or how things are going?
Well, that was my first fear. Right after diagnosis, my first fear was, okay, are my daughters going to get this too? I have 3 daughters. My oldest is 33. My youngest is 22. And then my middle one is 30. So yes, that was definitely my first fear. What is going to happen to them? Unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't test any. All my BRCAs were negative. I didn't have anything like that. But it still is in the back of my mind. What is, where did my cancer came from, and where is it going to go to my daughter? So we had that conversation. I had that conversation with the 3 of them, and yeah, they can't get a mammogram yet because probably they're too young for that. I've been pushing my oldest to ask, and she has asked her gynecologist. Okay, I want to know more. I want to start getting mammograms. So that's definitely important. I don't know if it's along the same lines or not, but I just wanted to also talk about family reactions. And in my case, I come from a very, very strong Catholic background. And when I say to my family, when my family found out I have cancer, everybody is like, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And is that kind of mentality that is not going to happen to you? You're going to be fine. And trusting God that you're not going to, that is going to be nothing. And that's frustrating at times that they think that way. Because yes, my faith is, I have a really strong faith, but at the same time, our bodies are matter. So our bodies react differently because of different circumstances. And when I got my second diagnosis, there was one time that my mom said something that really bugged me, really bothered me, because yes, why did you get it again if your faith is so strong? But that's not the way it is. That's not the way it is. Again, it's our bodies that respond to whatever is in us. Yes, the faith has kept me through, given me a strength to go through all these things. But I do feel that in a lot of the times, my family kind of negates what is really happening to me, and that's hard.
Yeah. Amanda and I have had these conversations quite a bit about how people in the religious community often look at things like an illness in a very negative way. I mean, I was literally asked by more than one person, what sin did I have unconfessed in my life that would have caused this thing to happen? And I have a feeling Amy wanted to weigh in on that as well.
You have no
She comes from a faith background also.
Yeah, so I come from a faith background, and I'm very, like, I live and walk by faith, but I feel like it's a one person journey, right? Like it can't be my parents can't do it for me. But when I got diagnosed, when I thought I had cancer and I told my family I think it's cancer, they're like, no, it's just an infection. I'm like, no, like before I ever got diagnosed, I'm like 99% sure something's not right. So I get diagnosed. And just so you guys are aware, I thought I was stage 1. The surgeon said I was stage 1. Nothing showed up on the initial imaging except like that I had one small mass and I had cancer in both breast and lymph nodes. So when I went into surgery, I thought having a bilateral mastectomy, I did not think I needed chemo, radiation, nothing. We thought I was one and done. And when I woke up, I had nerve blocks because they found the cancer in the lymph nodes during surgery. And so I woke up screaming, asking for my mom because I wanted to see her face to know if it was somewhere else. So my family, we're going to pray it away. We're going to pray it away. And which I appreciate, pray for me. But don't just pray for me. Know I'm human. And even though I have faith, I'm going to be doubtful too in some of these circumstances. So the second time when it came back, they're like, nope, it's not cancer. I'm like, but I'm pretty sure it is. And I got the same questions, Claudia. What did you do? Like, why are you getting it again? And like, God gave it to you. No, like, that's not the thing. Like, if I want to live by faith, then I've got to be an example to you that I can't go to pieces. It doesn't mean I can't have a bad day and be negative. It just means that I got to trust in the process and that it's going to work. You know what I mean? At some point, it's going to work. This is like, I know, Abigail, you hate the word journey. It's my journey, not your journey or somebody else's. This is my path to walk. So am I supposed to be an example for somebody else on how they proceed? Okay, I can be a better human and I can't get angry. That's where my faith comes into place. It's happening. Like, I'm part of this and it happens to me, but it doesn't mean that just because it's happening to me, I got to be miserable to everybody else. And I think that's where people that don't have faith or do have faith go the other way. But that's probably been the hardest thing because they're waiting to see, are you going to say something? Are you going to be crazy? But I'm a human first. And that's what I think people forget. They think just because you have faith, you can't have fear. And you can have fear.
Yeah,
for sure.
One of the books that I have loved as part of, understanding this experience, and journey is still something that's like you go on a journey by choice. I'm like, this is not a choice that I've made to be in this experience. So that's why I don't like the word journey, but I am fine with other people using it. But one of the authors that I have loved, and I know Amanda follows her as well, is Kate Bowler, who wrote the book, Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved. And she has stage 4 colorectal cancer and is a professor at not Duke. She's a professor somewhere. Is it Duke? Oh, okay. Anyway, so but the idea that because the prosperity gospel is what her dissertation was on, and this idea that if you if you love God and if you're in the right path, then everything will be wonderful for you. You will have prosperity. And just that how that then becomes something of a patient shaming situation. And Claudia talked a little bit earlier about, what should I have done? What should I have done differently? What should I not have done? I think these questions come up all the time, but at the end of the day, we are helpless. And I think that is one of the lessons that I've learned through this process, is that we are helpless to our cells. Our cells are going to do what they are going to do. We can do every single thing right, and our cells are still going to do something. Our immune systems are still not going to work properly, or those tumor markers are going to go up and down or whatever, but we don't have control over those things. And as somebody who's very high on the control scale, like, off the charts, that has been a very difficult thing for me to accept, that there is not really anything that I can do to change the trajectory of the cells in my body. I can influence how I feel about those things. I can work on being mindful. I can work on being grateful. I read something somewhere that whatever you're filling up your mind, your spirit, your experience with, that's what comes out. So if you're angry about the situation, anger is going to come out. If you are focusing really hard on being grateful, then a lot of times gratitude can come out. Although I still think that sometimes anger is very healthy. It's healthy to feel our emotions about the situation. We are getting here to 5, but I did want to make sure that I addressed one of the other pre-questions, which was, if you've had progression and they are unable to do a biopsy, how do you know, without being able to test the mets and what mutations have occurred, how do you know what treatment to go to next? And that was actually my experience for the first 4.5 years of my experience with metastatic breast cancer, because I had bone-only mets, and all of the bone biopsies that we tried failed, because there is a process of decalcification when they take cancer out of your bones that oftentimes destroys the ability to see what was there. And so every time I got a bone biopsy, it was like, yep, that was bone. That was all we got out of these biopsies. And so legitimately, what we were doing with all of the medications that I was on until the cancer spread to my liver in January was guessing. The doctors were guessing based on their clinical knowledge, based on the statistics. Yes, it was an educated guess about what we might be able to do, but we were working off of the genomic testing that they had done on my original breast tumor when I was originally diagnosed in 2017. And for 4.5 years, that's all the information that we had. Now, there is also such a thing as a liquid biopsy, where they take blood and they do genomic testing on your blood. Now, many of these tests are not even approved by the FDA yet, because it is such a growing area of research. But sometimes somatic mutations can show up in the blood. The challenge is that you cannot test every drop of blood in your body. And there's no way to know for sure if a circulating tumor cell is in whatever vials of blood that they pull. And so it's not as reliable as a tissue biopsy. But it can help confirm maybe things you already know about the original tumor, and then the doctors make educated guesses based on their clinical experience. And this is why I love getting second opinions. And I always recommend to people, if you are not fully comfortable with what your doctor is saying, go ask somebody else, because doctors are not God. All the doctors have the same access to the research, but yet they've developed different clinical comfort levels with different types of treatment. And so that doesn't mean anybody is right or wrong. It's just that their experiences have been one way or another. And I think that, getting my thought process always is the more smart people who are thinking about what's good for the cancer in my body, the better. I would like every smart person in the world to be solving the puzzle of the cancer in my body. So I think that's where second opinions can be very helpful, but it is pretty scary when you don't have current information about the metastasis. You don't know for sure if the medication that you're on is right.
Hey,
but let
Abigail.
me tell you, even when go ahead. Hold on a second. Even when we do have all of the information, we still don't know for sure if the medication is going to actually work. So I've still had progression, even when I had the mutation and the medication was targeting that mutation, still had progression there. So you never know for sure, but having more information is better. Go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
So I wanted to just piggyback on what Abigail said about imaging. So this is where imaging comes into place too. And people often ask, why do I get a PET scan? Why does my doctor order a bone scan? It's preference on how they look at stuff, how the type of cancer you have reacts to the different types of imaging. But it also goes, if you have something and they're not committed to saying that this is a progression, like say you go for a scan and something's a little abnormal and they say it may be a little bit bigger. So just wanted to add, if it's a different doctor reading it, no two sets of eyes measure the things the same way. So just remember that. So if you have progression or they're making you wait, they're not trying to torture you. They're trying to make sure if what they see is real. If it's on the scan, if it's not, that's why they often do a short-term interval follow-up, like 3 to 6 months. Or if you had a CAT scan, they'll say, hey, go for an MRI, because those tests become more dedicated as you move through. So just stay on your oncologist or your medical team, just encouraging you again to listen to your body. But if the medical team can't give you a direct diagnosis, that's why. They might be trying to suggest that you have a different test. When your insurance gives you resistance, there are certain codes that your doctor can use. Just ask your doctor to do peer-to-peer. So just wanted to put that out there because she was talking about if you can't have a biopsy or if you have certain things and you can't have certain medical tests, there are other options.
And they're getting better all the time,
Yeah.
all those tests. There's, in fact, a brand new type of PET scan that is specific to those of us who are hormone positive. PET scans are not the best for lobular cancers because they don't metabolize the glucose in the same way, but also for those of us who are hormone positive, some of the radioactive elements that they use it just doesn't react the same with our bodies. And so they're getting better and better at some of those things. We just don't all have access to them yet. But thank you, Amy, for that reminder. Amanda, did you want to add something there?
Yes, I think this is all such good information, and scans, giving us the information we need to make informed decisions. And I say us because I do consider myself on my oncologist team. It's my care. And so I've become a very vocal voice in what happens next. But another thing that I can't stress enough is just get second and third and fourth opinions. Like Abigail has mentioned, that's something she's taught me. And I have my local oncologist now who consults with the oncologist who I see at Dana-Farber in Boston. And sometimes you might think, well, I can't travel. I can't, it's too much work. But a lot of oncologists are now able to see, through telehealth or telemedicine. It's always worth an ask. And, the more, I guess the phrase cooks in the kitchen, the better, because somebody's going to see something or know something different than, somebody you've worked with for a while. And I think that could be the difference between a treatment that you have, is the right next treatment, and then something that might not be the right next treatment. And so I take those moments where we have to make decisions, I take them very seriously, and I get the opinion of everybody involved if I can, even to the point of like a radiation oncologist, because, progression in bones is very different than having progression in your liver. And so there's just a lot to consider. It's not cut and dry. I know you guys all know this, but second, third opinions, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Gosh, such a powerful conversation today. Thank you, Abigail, Amanda, Amy, and Claudia for joining us on Breast Cancer Conversations, sharing your personal experiences, helping us understand and gain deeper insight into the community and those living with metastatic breast cancer. So thank you for sharing your stories, giving us advice, and answering our burning questions. And thank you all for listening and tuning in week after week here on Breast Cancer Conversations. Please be mindful that all of our content and information is for educational purposes only and is never a substitute for medical advice. If you want to hang out, again, please check out survivingbreastcancer.org/events, where you can RSVP to our Thursday Night Thrivers weekly meetup, our Movement Monday classes, workshops, seminars, and so much more. We can also continue the dialogue online via social media. Our Instagram handle is survivingbreastcancer.org, all one word, and you can follow us on Twitter at SBC_ORG. Until next time, keep on thriving.